Hey everyone, and welcome back again to the Bitter Geeks Podcast. This is episode 14, and normally I would start by saying, I apologize for the gap in time, but if you're a listener of us for any period of time, you would know that this is, normal for us. We have a lot of things to talk about today. This is definitely going to be the most different episode because we're not going to be inherently talking about anything DCEU related or superhero related or anything like that. So we're actually, we teased this a few months back in one of our previous episodes. Now that Liz is here, we are finally going to be talking about Lord of the Rings, which is something that, I didn't watch the trilogy or anything until late December, early January. So since then, like my entire, outside of, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Lord of the Rings has dominated all of my time for nerd stuff. So we're here to talk about that. And joining me, if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
I am Outspeed. You can find me at Almost Out of Steel on Twitter.
I'm Liz. You can find me at AtheistJLiz on Twitter.
All right, cool. So between the three of us, Liz is definitely the most well-versed in all things Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, Tolkien, all that stuff. Of the three of us, I'm more in the middle as far as like I've been getting myself more well versed now that I've seen the Hobbit trilogy and the Lord of the Rings and stuff. And then Al has only seen the Fellowship of the Ring. So this is definitely going to be an interesting conversation.
Half of the second movie.
Okay, and half of Two Towers. Okay, and so he's still not great with names. So if he fumbles, please forgive him.
Strider is the old man, right?
All right, so so obviously, like I mentioned, I didn't come into the trilogy until recently, and mainly that was because Liz pushed me to do it.
That.
And and Liz has been someone who if you follow her on social media, she's very much big fan of this area of nerd space. It's and for me, I just, for whatever reason, when I tried watching the trilogy when I was younger, I just couldn't really get into it. Like, the last time I really tried to watch it was, 8th grade, and it was, one of the last days of school. I only watched, 30 minutes of it, maybe. And then I'm like, okay, I'm not really interested in this. And then when I was a kid, I remember I'd seen, bits and pieces of, Two Towers, but, I never really, knew much of the lore other than, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movies, but, I knew about Boromir's death. I knew Gandalf died and came back. And I knew, certain things here and there. I knew, of Gollum. I knew of Frodo. And I knew of, certain things. And I know, some people, obviously these are revered as some of the greatest movies of all time. And I agree. But, of course, there are some people who are oh, these movies are just three movies of people walking into a volcano. I'm like, okay, well, it's obviously much more than that. But now that I am well-versed in the... I wouldn't say well-versed. Now that I'm, as I mentioned earlier to Liz and Al here before we started recording, I'm in the middle of my 10th rewatch of the trilogy since I first started watching it in December. And it's... Obviously, if you guys are listening to the podcast, you guys know how much of a DCEU fan I am. Lord of the Rings is tied, if not edges out, my love for Zack Snyder's DC movies. And for me, that's saying a lot.
It's more than that, but okay, I'll accept that for now.
Well, just for me personally, Zack Snyder's movies hit me on a really personal note, and so for me,
yeah, of course.
I've always thought the Man of Steel and Batman v Superman were some of the best movies ever made. Obviously, that's just me. But after watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the extended editions, I do want to point out.
Of course, the only way to watch them if you're listening.
I've never seen the theatricals. I have no desire to now. I'm not going to watch something that is lacking in content. They're seriously some of the best movies I've ever watched. And it's just... I'm so mad that I missed out on so many years of talking about these movies. Because now, of course I have Liz to talk to. I have some of my nerd friends to talk to. But beyond that, everyone is very much so moved on from these movies because it's been 20 years.
I haven't, but and I saw them in theaters. I just never moved on.
Which is fair. But yeah, so these movies, obviously, like I said, are some of the greatest movies of all time. So I just mentioned my experience watching these for the first time. Liz, talk about your experience watching the movies and kind of your overall experience with, getting into the lore and to the fandom and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, God. Well, so when they were originally coming out in theaters in 2001, 2, and 3, I was 5, 6, and 7, and my parents, for some reason, took me to see all 3 of them in theaters. And I don't know why they did that, other than maybe they just didn't want to pay for a babysitter. But I know that they wanted me to watch them because they were big fans of Lord of the Rings. So they took me to see them. Of course, when you're that young, you're not really going to process everything. I remember really liking them, though, because I thought the hobbits were like children. I thought they were kids because they were so small. So as a kid watching that, I thought, oh, that's really cool. Like, in this big movie, it's about these like little people that I thought were children. So I kind of related to the hobbits in that way. And I remember thinking Legolas was really pretty, which he still is. And I remember kind of zoning out if there weren't like really big action scenes because I was 5 or 6 or 7. But I saw the third one. By the time I was 7 and watching the third one, I was kind of old enough to be a little bit more invested. Mm-hmm. My dad took me to see that movie in theaters 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
And I kept asking to go see it, but I think I was just his excuse to go see it multiple times.
He sounds like my kind of guy.
It's like, she wants to go see it again. Well, yeah, he probably did too. So I saw that one a bunch of times, and I loved it. I loved the third one so much. The third one was the first time I felt like I was really like getting the movies. So though they did scare me, certainly. I had a lot of fear of Gollum. He scared the hell out of me as a kid. He scared me so much as a kid, and I still have trouble getting through the Shelob scene in the third one. Good luck with that, Al.
Well, isn't it an interesting thing? Like, didn't Peter Jackson come from horror?
Yes, his first. No, I don't know if it's his first. Actually, one of his first movies is a zombie movie. So, I just love directors who did zombie movies first. I know. So, yeah, he has done horror before, and you can tell in a lot of the Lord of the Rings scenes, which I love. So, yeah, the movies definitely scared me, but I really liked them a lot. So, and then I just, I got older, and I always liked them. Like, my family, we would just sometimes marathon them, like, once or twice a year, which I always loved doing. So I just grew up on them. Like, these movies helped raise me. Then when I was a teenager, I finally was like, okay, I gotta read the books. So I read The Hobbit. A couple years later, I read Lord of the Rings. And I just loved all of them. They're so great. They're great books. I'd recommend them to anybody. And I just recently bought the Silmarillion, which is like the history of Middle-earth book that Tolkien wrote. So I need to read that. But yeah, and I still rewatch the movies about once a year, and I love them. They're my favorite movies of all time, and they probably always will be. They're very special to me. I do love them. So Al, you go. Your experience is very different from mine.
I don't know how to follow up to that, but okay. So, I mean, technically, this isn't my first time watching Lord of the Rings. I watched, I think, a little bit of the Hobbit movie. I don't know which one I watched, but at the end, the dragon escapes the gold place.
That's the second one.
It's a Hobbit movie.
The dragon escapes the gold place. And I think, I watched that movie. So I think that was my first time ever watching a Lord of the Rings related movie. But, watching the first movie, I enjoyed it. I liked that it was a little bit different from what I usually watch, and for that film, I sort of enjoyed just the buildup of the world around. Because like, with movies like this, I usually like to watch how the world sort of opens itself up to me. You know, hearing all the lore and what goes into the properties of magic, what goes into the thing, and, you know, understanding how everything essentially works from the ground up. I thought that was really entertaining. And just other things. I liked the, and this might be a small thing, but I liked the cinematography of, you know, the beginning of the second movie, where Santa Claus is falling into a fiery pit.
Santa Claus, really?
Okay, I'll deal with that.
Where, well, yeah, he's falling into a fiery pit, and I just like, wait, what's his name?
Gandalf.
Okay, Gandalf. Got it. Okay, Gandalf. So I enjoyed that Gandalf. I like that cinematography in that instance because, like, you know, it's very. It just looks really good for its time, you know. And I'm pretty sure if I saw that in movie theaters, you know, coming off of the first film, I would probably be like shitting myself by how epic it was. Mm-hmm. But I really liked that scene. I liked the music that went with it. Just things like that. But like I said, I am gonna watch the rest of the movies. I haven't like completely dropped off with them. I think the last moment I remember from the second movie was the two other hobbits. I forgot their names.
Merry and Pippin.
Harry and Pippin. Yes. I think I left off where one of them said they got taller. That is where I left off. But I am curious to see, huh?
That's actually a reference to the books because they drink that water and they become the tallest hobbits in history.
By a couple inches?
Yeah, I mean, like they're 4 feet tall or whatever.
Wow. I'm starting to warm up to Gollum a bit, you know, and I feel like with Gollum, he isn't so much to blame for his obsession with the ring. I think, you know, he basically watched over that ring for
hundreds of years.
Yeah, hundreds of years, and obviously, it's like trying to kick a really bad. You know, I don't want to like make light of this or anything, but it's kind of like kicking an addiction.
Yeah, it's very much pain.
You're essentially tied to, like, he's tied to this ring because it is probably the biggest and only thing that has given him any semblance of joy. And, you know, now he has to accompany these people who want to destroy it. And I think deep down he does want to destroy it for his own peace of mind. But at the same time, there's also this afterthought of, you know, if they destroy it, then what do I have afterwards? What do I have then? And, you know, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not he actually breaks the obsession with the ring.
Dude, it's so hard for us to talk here and not...
Hey, oh god, this is terrible. Is this a non-spoiler discussion?
I don't care if you spoil it for me.
But it's.
I mean, look. Okay, let me also confess something. I have seen the end of the third movie.
Okay.
So I know what happens.
Do you know what happens when it comes to how the ring is destroyed?
No.
Ah!
Well, okay. At this point, he said it's okay to spoil him. So okay.
Yeah, it's okay to spoil me. I don't mind.
No, but it's such a nice experience.
I know. And that's the thing for me. Like
when he said, like, "Oh, it's going to be interesting to see," it made me not want to tell him.
Well, that's the funny thing. Like for me, I mentioned, like I had known certain things going in, but like as far as like actual like huge story points and important details, I was like pretty much in the dark. Like I figured, you know, they're gonna win at the end of the day. You know, that like everything's gonna be pretty much fine. Like it's not that kind of story where you know the bad guys are gonna win. You know, but it's the getting there and all the stuff in between. That's all the stuff I didn't know. So watching movies, it is a really nice experience. So it's, you know, I apologize in advance for spoiling these things for you, but as long as you're okay with it, you know, it's whatever.
Oh, no, I'm okay with it. Like, Like, I already know. I know that Gollum, Sam, and Frodo. Yes. Oh god, that's the worst one. How do I not know his name?
Well, Sam is easy, and you didn't.
Sam is easy. No, but like Frodo's like the most popular one.
I mean, I wouldn't say that, but he is the player.
Is he?
Is he the what?
Is he the most popular one of the?
It's debatable at best.
Okay.
No, in fact, he's probably the most criticized. the fan favorite character is Sam.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
For very obvious reasons too.
Yes, and you'll see more of why mostly in the third one, but he's great in all movies.
Yeah.
Okay. So I do know that we get to the end. I think doesn't Gollum bite Frodo's fingers off?
Yeah, God, I hate that scene. That was.
I hate it too.
I saw that scene. I was like, Jesus Christ, he bit his fingers off.
Yeah, that seems brutal. Yeah.
Is that in the books?
Yeah. That whole scene is the first of all, the Mount Doom scene for me is why the third movie. It's just the incredible climactic scene. But yeah, that whole scene basically plays out the same in the book. The only difference is after Frodo and Gollum have their fight over the ring, and Gollum bites his finger off, and Frodo, falls, but then Gollum just falls over the edge. He and Frodo don't topple over together. That's the only difference.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, overall, it's basically exactly the same. From Frodo putting on the ring to Gollum hitting Sam with the rock to them fighting over the ring, biting off the finger. The only change is the last part.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Great, I love that scene. Book and movie, it's excellent.
Okay, so on that topic of changes from the books to the movies, since you've read the books and we haven't, how would you compare this adaptation? Well, compared to other adaptations, but also just like how do you feel it did as far as adapting what it could?
I think it's a very good adaptation. It's overall a well-respected one, obviously, considering how loved those movies are. The Tolkien estate has its mixed feelings about it, which, for the record, I totally respect and understand. Like, when it's your father's work, your grandfather's work. Some of them love it, some of them don't. I totally get it. But there are certain things that they've changed that maybe I wouldn't have, but there are other changes they made that I thought were really strong and probably for the best for the movie. Like, they changed, Shelob doesn't appear until the third movie, but she's in the second book, which I think that change made a lot of sense for the narrative-wise. And I think they did a little bit more to make Boromir more sympathetic. He's sympathetic in the books, certainly, but they give him more with Merry and Pippin that makes him even more likable. I like that they gave him flashback scenes.
Yeah.
So things like that. I wish we had gotten more. They changed a lot about Aragorn is, but again, I don't mind this change. Aragorn in the book is far more accepting of his role as king from the get-go. Yeah, like pretty much from book one, he's like, he gets the sword in
immediately,
book one,
right? Yeah,
that's a big moment in in the third movie where he gets the sword. But in the books, it was book one. He got the sword and he was like, "Yeah, once we get to Gondor, I'll be king," which is in a book I think is completely fine. I think that made sense for his character. But they did remove a lot of his backstory with the Dunedain, the other Rangers, and like his story there, which is a bummer. But again, these are 4-hour movies. So I get why they made some cuts. I'm not sure I would have included Frodo telling Sam to leave. I don't
in the third movie, right?
With that, at the what? Sorry.
In Return of the King is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I'm jumping around.
No, it's okay. I was just clarifying.
Yeah, when Frodo and Sam have their falling out, and Frodo tells Sam to go home, I understand why they did it. I know they wanted to completely to show just how much the ring had taken hold of him. It's a very like powerful, emotional scene, but I don't think I like it that much at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way because every time I watch it, it makes me super mad. Like,
yeah,
and I know that's the goal, but like, I hate feeling that way.
Yeah, I think I've only watched that scene like once. I literally don't watch it every time. It's so sad. It's just like to see Frodo that way and to see Sam just so devastated and to see Gollum kind of win. It's horrible. Like, I don't like the scene. Again, I guess from a movie making perspective, sure, I get it. But like, if I was making the movies, I wouldn't have. No, I wouldn't have had that. So there are plenty of things that they took out that a couple of them I wouldn't have, some of them I understand, and a couple of things they added I didn't like. But overall, I think and this is the main thing, I think they stayed true to the spirit of the story, to the theme. Important, like, so much of the relationship between Frodo and Sam, I think, was perfectly adapted, other than that one thing. So I think you really have the feeling of Tolkien in the movies, the themes, the heart of it is all there. And at the end of the day, that's what matters to me most. So it is a great adaptation. Yes, I would have made some changes, but I love those movies as they are.
Yeah. And I will say, too, like, obviously I didn't read the books, so, like, a lot of the information I'm getting from the books is, like, YouTube videos or, like, TikToks or stuff like that. So, like, or even, like, you know, seeing clips of, like, the old animated Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, you know, the old, really old school ones. And so for me, like, I'm you know, full disclosure, like I said, like, I haven't read the books. This is just coming from just my personal opinion of knowing what's in one thing and not the other, or vice versa. I think I agree as far as the whole Aragorn thing. I like him, reluctantly accepting his role as king later on. Or, like, or becoming more accepting of it as the danger comes closer. Like, that makes thematically more sense, and I think it makes me like Aragorn more. That he doesn't want it, than him just being like, yeah, I'm gonna be king. Because then I don't think that's nearly as interesting.
Yes, I agree. And I love Book Aragorn, don't get me wrong. But he gets more of an arc in the movies, which I appreciate.
Yeah, and like, you know, obviously, like, I agree with you, the whole, like, Sam and Frodo, like, that whole bit, like, it's really frustrating, and, like I said, I'm in the middle of watching Return of the King now, and every time I get to that scene, I'm like, I want to, like, turn it off. Just, like, it makes me so mad.
I know, it's like more than any other scene, I dread it. Once I turn on Return of the King, I'm like, I need to get ready to leave the room.
I know. Which, like, I will say that, like, for a movie, it does its job. But as far as, like, what I would want, and, like I said, like, as far as an adaptation, like, did the movie need that scene? No. Again, I understand, like, I agree with you. Like, I understand why Peter Jackson included it. But, like, I just don't like seeing it. I don't. Like, and it's not because it's bad, it just really is frustrating, to say the least. And, like, I'm trying to think of, like, other changes, like, okay, so you obviously would know more about this character than I do, and I follow, like, or, like, see certain, like, you know, Lord of the Rings fans or pages on Twitter talk about this guy, Tom Bombadil. Can you explain to me who he is, what his role originally was? Because obviously he ain't in the movies.
Oh, God. It's like, who is Tom Bombadil? Is like one of the great mysteries of Tolkien. So that's a character that's in Fellowship of the Ring, and that's actually that whole. I mean, we see it in the movie, like the section from when Frodo leaves the Shire to when he gets to Bree, and when they're being chased by the ring wraiths. That's actually my favorite part of the book. I think it's excellent. It's much longer in the book, partly because of Tom Bombadil. So basically, they're on the run from the wraiths. They get to the old forest, and they're going through it, and they come across Tom Bombadil, and he's just basically this ageless very happy, like singing all the time man. Like, he's not an elf, he's not a wizard, but he's not human. Like, we don't really know what he is, and they stay with him and his wife, who we don't know what she is either, for a few days or 3 weeks or however long it is. And he's the thing about him that's so interesting is he sees the ring at one point, and Frodo offers it to him, and Tom Bombadil just like takes it and puts it on, and he doesn't turn invisible, and he takes it off and is like, here you go, and it's just like, what? And he's like, it was like, whatever, like, he didn't care about the ring at all. And he seems like he has some kind of power, but like it's really unclear, and we have no idea really why the ring has no effect on him. And we never know really what he is. He's just like this happy man that they come across, and then they leave, and that's it. Like, and Gandalf knows him, so it's a really cool part of the book. I like it a lot. I get why they removed it, because he is such an odd character, and he really doesn't impact the story after that. He kind of just like helps them out a little bit. So I get why they removed it, but he is a very interesting character, but that really is his role, and Tolkien never explained exactly what he is. We know he's like the oldest being in Middle-earth, but he's also just this happy guy who sings, and that's really the only explanation we get of him. So that's Tom Bombadil.
That's so weird. I just can't imagine, obviously, now knowing that, I understand why it was cut for time, but I just can't even imagine, in the films as they are, that inclusion. I just feel like it would just take,
yes,
it would take away from, the immediate danger of, okay, we're being chased.
Yes, it would. In a book, his presence is totally fine, because books are so different in that way.
Yeah, of course.
Because it makes sense, for a few days they, chilled at this place that, the ring wraiths can't get to. That's cool. But, in a movie, that doesn't really work. I mean, I would have loved to see Tom Bombadil, because he's a fun character, but I get why he was cut.
So did they have sorry, excuse my stuttering. Did they ever cast the role or have a role in mind or someone for the role in mind, or was it just they're just not including that at all from the get-go?
That was, yes, to my knowledge, he was going to be in the movie, and that they might have even. I don't think we've definitely not seen the footage, but I think they may have even shot something. It might have just been very early. I don't even know if it was finished, but I think they did play around with including Tom Bombadil. I don't think any official casting ever came out, but it just ended up not working. But it seemed to me they really did try to include him, and it just wasn't working, which makes sense. Yeah,
because again, I think that's the thing with adaptations. It's always a juggling of okay, well, what do we include, what do we not include, and what do we add that wasn't there? And, obviously, once again, I didn't read the books, but just watching certain things and now knowing okay, well, this didn't happen in the book, but they added it. It's always a juggle with okay, well, is this good, or is this okay, well, is this unnecessary? So the Sam and Frodo thing, I lean towards it being unnecessary, but I understand why they included it. But another thing, I've and correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't the Dunedain supposed to show up at the end of Two Towers instead of the elves, or am I wrong?
Wait. Oh, which part are you referring to? When the elves show up at Helm's Deep,
or either way? I know, I might just be mixing up my information, but I know I read or saw somewhere that, or at least I thought I did, that the Dunedain show up at some point in that time during the battle, or after the battle, or towards the end.
They do. The Dunedain do show up. I mentioned that earlier a little bit. The elves don't come to Helm's Deep.
That I know. Yeah, so that was a change too. Yeah.
That's a change that didn't really bother me at all, though. And the Dunedain do show up. It's not in that scene though. They don't replace the elves in that scene. The Dunedain show up, and the whole process of Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas going to the that ghost army. There's a ghost army. that's a lot longer, and the Dunedain are present for all of that, and that's a big part of the book. And so I do feel that loss. I kind of wish that they'd figured out a way to include that, because I like the Dunedain a lot. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of cool characters, and it was cool to see like Aragorn's other family.
So in the book, really, sorry to interrupt, but like in the book, so is Aragorn, like, is he the last of his line, or does he actually have family still around?
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't have any brothers or sisters or anything. He had his mother, and she died.
Okay. Which they kind of talked about in the movie and Fellowship, right? Like he's like at like her grave or something, or
yes, because she had taken him to Rivendell. Is the gist there, and she died there. So he is the last of his line. I mean, he has a child with Arwen, obviously, but he...
No.
Oh, yeah, spoiler. Arwen and Aragorn end up together. Yes, but he's the last one. He doesn't have, like, a convenient younger brother. No, like, there are other Dunedain, but they're all just descended from... God, there's so much lore. Okay, so here's the gist. The Dunedain are descended from Elrond's brother's line, and they're all just scattered around Middle Earth. I mean,
basically they're all distantly cousins or something.
I mean, there might be some distant cousins, but like, oh god, so we'll find out actually in the Amazon show more about this, because they're all descended from an island that, you know, used to exist. It doesn't anymore. So they're talking about a lot of stuff that's like it's really like a lot to unpack all the time. Like, I'm not even following it completely. Just know that like the Dunedain are just like related to Gondor. They're certainly like that whole kingdom is like they descend from that as well, but they all live like around in the northern area around where the Shire is. Like that's the place they protect and live in, and that's where Aragorn always was before the Lord of the Rings, obviously. Hi.
Sorry, that was my daughter. For those of you listening, but you can go on.
I mean, yeah, that's the gist. Like the Dunedain, they live longer because a lot of them are part elf, and they just kind of protect the region around the Shire, and that's what Aragorn lived his life doing as a ranger. Gotcha. And then the events of Lord of the Rings happened.
Gotcha. And so that's like my. It's not a criticism, but I just think it's interesting. Like the movies themselves, like hardly ever hold your hand with the lore.
No, they don't.
It's like they pretty much like either expect you to know, or you just figure it out later on, or just take it as it is, and we're just going with it. There's oh god, the amount of stuff in Lord of the Rings. It's just like I certainly can't. I haven't read the Silmarillion. I haven't read all the notes that Tolkien has written about Middle Earth. He's written so much that I've not read. But it is. I love how much there is, because to me it just makes Middle Earth cooler, makes it feel real. But yeah, stuffing all that in movies was not. They did their best.
I like the part where Dumbledore came back to life.
Oh my god!
No,
stop!
I'm gonna leave. Hold on, bye. Just because you said that, I'll be right back.
But seriously though, so I'm still a little lost on how like Gandalf came back. Was it because he was like? I assumed it's because of magic, but was it because he what exactly was it? Because he said he became like Gandalf the White, but like what does that really mean though?
Wait, did Liz actually walk away? Well, since I'm here, I also don't really know the answer to that question. But as far as I know, like, it's hard because in the movie they kind of sort of tried to explain it. Like, she will have a better answer for this. But from what I gathered, it's like he died, but then the universe or whatever, like, said, hey, like, the world still needs you to fight Sauron. So you're going back, but because Saruman is now evil, you're basically you're going to be the new White Wizard. You're going to be, like, at this point, the most powerful wizard currently around.
Ah, okay.
So he's brought back, like, with a purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, like, let's say, like, Gandalf died and there wasn't this looming threat, I don't think he would have been brought back. I think he would have just died.
Okay.
We're talking about Jesus resurrection.
Okay, there you are. Okay, so you get better answer this. So he's just asking, how was Gandalf brought back? Because he doesn't know for sure. And I tried to explain it with my own interpretation of it, but I'm sure you have a better answer.
Oh, you sounded right to me. God did. I mean, angel. He's basically an angel. That's the best wizards in Lord of the Rings. They're kind of the equivalent of angels, except they're in the form of wizards. And Gandalf was one who was sent to Middle-earth by the god of Middle-earth, who's not called God, he's called Eru. And he sent Gandalf there with a purpose, which was to protect Middle-earth and yada yada yada. And when he died, his mission was not complete, so God brought him back to life.
Okay.
So I wasn't too far off. That's good.
No, yeah, that's the gist. I think that's what the movies kind of imply. Like, I think he even says something like that. Oh, my mission's not complete or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, like, when he was brought back, he didn't call himself Gandalf. So is it to say, like, he, like, I don't, like, I guess it's like shedding your human form and just becoming something else? Because, like, he was saying he's no longer Gandalf. Is that, like, in a literal sense or in, like, a other sense?
I think part of it is that, I mean, again, he's another character that has a lot of names. And I don't know what he probably has, like, he did actually, I don't remember what it was, but when he was originally created by Eru, the god, he had a certain name that was not Gandalf. Gandalf is kind of his Middle-earth, like, it's almost really the name that just the hobbits call him. Other people do too, but it's really kind of his, like local fireworks seller name, you know? Like, that's what he became to be known as in Middle-earth. It's almost, like, pretty casual. Like, it's kind of a nickname almost. Whereas, if you watch the third one, when he meets Faramir, I think you've met Faramir already, right, Al?
Faramir?
Boromir's brother.
Gormir?
Oh, God. Sean Bean's brother.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He's the one who captures Frodo and Sam.
Yeah.
There's a scene in the third one where Faramir calls him Mithrandir. So that's another one of his names, and that's like a more formal name. Mm-hmm. So I think that he wasn't. I think that's true. He wasn't really Gandalf anymore. That version of Gandalf did die. He was gone. I mean, he was reincarnated, yes, but he's still him, but he is quite different. Gandalf the White's pretty different in a lot of ways. I like Gandalf the Grey better, personally.
Wait, Gandalf the Grey?
Gandalf the Grey. He's the who? Okay.
Oh, the original.
Yeah, the original. Like, that's just the easy. Gandalf the Grey, Gandalf the White. Gandalf the Grey, I like better.
Because personality-wise, there isn't much of a distinction, but there is a distinction, at least that I noticed. Because I remember, I don't know if I brought it up or someone else did, but I remember you tweeted that exact opinion, and I remember being like, oh, I don't know, I feel like they're kind of sort of the same, but then especially after watching the Hobbit movies,
yeah,
that cemented that I agree with you, because That feels more genuinely who Gandalf is, and Gandalf the White is just the protector with the mission who's also kind of a dick.
Yes, and he's a lot more serious. I mean, of course, there are ways he's the same. I mean, like, to me, he still has the same opinion of Pippin.
Yeah. If anything, it's a harsher opinion.
Yes, exactly. He still doesn't like Pippin. But yes, they are at their core. They're the same. They have the same values. But he is much more of a protector of Middle Earth when he's Gandalf the White, whereas I think as Gandalf the Grey, I think he's more of a person, which I like better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So I think, obviously, that better explains, I think, the distinction. Because I feel like, especially if you're watching the movie and you're like newbies like us, it's like I said, the movie. Well, all three kind of don't hold your hand most of the time with the lore and explaining things.
Yeah.
So it's definitely hard because I definitely have a lot of questions coming out the first time, and it took for me to like doing my own research to get those answers.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I'm like that too. I still have questions sometimes. Like I'm like, why did this happen? Or who is this? And I'll look things up. Like, it's still, there's a lot there that's not clear, which I actually like. To me, that makes it better.
Okay. So I'm kind of understanding some things.
Hold on, I'll be back.
Okay, so another question. Okay, so now, so like, has it only been that one ring that's been focused on, or has there been other rings that have been like focused on? Because I know there's like 7, right?
There are. Hold on, I'm counting. 20 rings.
There's 20.
Yeah, because remember in the opening, like in the first movie, they have like that background on like here's what happened with all of the rings and all that. Remember that?
Yeah.
Because remember, they say 9 were given to men.
Okay.
7 were given to the dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
3 were given to the elves, and then 1 ring was made. Is that 20?
9, 7, 1?
3. 1 and 3. Is that 20?
I think so.
Yeah,
I don't feel like counting.
But that's about 20. So, yeah, there are other rings. Like, remember in the first movie when Galadriel and Frodo have their conversation, she says, "This is my ring."
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the, like, the magical rings.
Okay.
And I don't know if you care, like, where the other ones are. But Gandalf has one. We don't really see it in Lord of the Rings. We see it in the Hobbit movies. I just assume he's wearing it all the time, but, like, he just uses magic, so you can't see it. That's
okay.
how I justify that. But Gandalf has a ring. Elrond does too. So that's where the 3 elvish rings are in the movies. Gandalf, Galadriel, Elrond. Elrond is Hugo Weaving, if you don't remember.
And can I just say, speaking of Galadriel, like, I didn't realize that Cate Blanchett was in these movies until she showed up.
It's funny.
Because, like, she didn't even pop up on my radar until the 4th Indiana Jones movie. That was the first time I had ever heard of her or seen her, ever.
The bad introduction.
I mean, I actually like that movie. But anyways, that's not the point. That's not the point. That's the point. But we watching the movie for the first time, I'm like, whoa. And she's just like... The movie does a really good job of making her just like feel like... radiate that energy of like... elvish beauty, you know? Like...
Yeah.
Like how Gimli feels is like how I felt. You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's just so taken aback by her. And it's just... I think she's really interesting. My question is, because the movies don't explain this either, what's with that, like, negative filter thing that happens with her and that in The Hobbit.
Negative filter. I love that. This is so fun. This is just like a Tolkien Q&A session, and I get to test myself. Okay. So, listen. Galadriel, like, all of the elves have a certain amount of power. Some of them are more powerful than the others for reasons that there's too much lore that I don't even get to go into. So just trust me on. Galadriel is one of the ones that is more powerful. Let's just say one of the reasons is because she's much older than most elves.
Yeah.
So she's not really just an elf. She's also a sorceress. Like, she has magic. So that scene, what you're referring to, the scene where she almost takes the ring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that scene is more, to me, I think there are multiple interpretations of it. It's in the book, too. I think that's really just kind of a vision of what she would be if she took the ring. It could almost be like, this would be the future if I did this. So, because she would look, terrifying.
Right.
So that's what that is to me. And in The Hobbit, I think that's a little different. To me, in that scene, that's her tapping into her power and using the power of her ring, and the magic she has to banish Sauron. So that's what I think that scene is. But again, I think there are probably multiple interpretations of that.
Gotcha. Because that was the thing, like, it was a scene that definitely threw me off when it first happened. Because she's so quiet and, like, reserved, and she speaks with her mind, not necessarily with her words, and all of a sudden that scene happens, and I'm like, okay, this is the direction we're going. Okay. Like, and go ahead.
The other too, I think it was a test for her, like it was for Aragorn in a way, like that he rejected the ring, but for her it was more literal, like she. Because at the end of the movie, let's just say, she would not have been allowed to leave with Frodo at the end when she goes to the Undying Lands if she had taken the ring. Like, it was a test for her. If she had to reject it in order to be able to be worthy to go to the Undying Lands.
Yeah.
At the end, so it's a really big character choice for her, and it's kind of implied that she was always going to have the ring presented to her, that she would have to either take it or reject it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. It's just like, as I keep saying, like, watching the movie for the first time and not knowing anything, and then just having stuff like that happen and there's no explanation for it, the movie just moves on.
Yeah, and that's a great example, actually, of, like, Galadriel being presented with the ring is, like, a scene that's packed with so much more, because you wouldn't know watching it that, like, oh, this is a really big deal, that if she takes this, that she'll be, like, denied the privilege of returning to her homeland in the Undying Lands. Like, you would never know that. But you just kind of have to get the gist, which is like, oh, he offered her the ring and she said no. But, like, if you know the lore of it, it's, like, really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's even now, knowing more of the lore, obviously I still don't know, clearly I don't know all of it.
Me neither.
But even then, like, I still feel like there's still so much there that I love and appreciate from each movie, and I always teeter back and forth on, like, which one's my favorite, because I love them all so close to equally. Like, I think Return of the King used to be my favorite. I think that one is getting a little bit lower, just because, like, I think you tweeted, or someone else tweeted that, like, the Ghost Army is one of those things that, like, it kind of just happens, and, like, it's a convenient plot device to help the heroes, go to the next,
The Ghost Army's weak. I mean, like, it's a book thing. It had to be in the movies, for sure. And it's, like, an important character moment for Aragorn. And I think there were cool things about it. I like that ghosts are canon in Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it's the same thing in the books. Like, oh, that's really convenient. Oh, it's an unstoppable ghost army. But that's just kind of how it goes.
And that's the thing. And I understand because, like, you know, obviously the Hobbit book came out before the Lord of the Rings books. And we're seeing the Lord of the Rings movies before we're seeing the Hobbit movies. So, like, for me, I'm just like, well, where the hell are the other elves? Where the hell are the other dwarves? Why is literally no one else helping if the entire world is at stake? You know?
Yeah, that's something else. I mean, that's only implied in a deleted scene in, I think, Return of the King. That Thranduil and Dane up at the Lonely Mountain in Mirkwood were having Sauron's armies encroach on them, and they wouldn't have been able to help if they could.
Which and that's the thing, like, I don't need to be spoon-fed everything, but little things like that I think would make me, like, not question things as much as I kind of do, because I do have a lot of questions for a lot of this stuff, and, like, especially when we're not given any clear answer, it's like, well, I'm not trying to say it's a plot hole, but it's like, well, logistically, why are we not talking about this?
Because the movie was 4 hours.
I know, but even then, like, a simple line of dialogue, like you said, if they had just mentioned that, like, if Legolas had said, like, oh, my father is also dealing with the forces of Sauron, and, you know, if it's something, like, along those lines, be like, okay, fine.
Yeah. No, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Like, I don't need a whole scene. If it's, like, one passing line of dialogue, fine. You know, I don't need the whole, like... And it's funny because, like, even before watching the Hobbit movies, I still feel like, especially in Fellowship, that, like, I kind of started getting the gist of what the Hobbit movies were. Because, obviously, you know, we start off with Fellowship, and, like, they're very clearly talking about what happened in the Hobbit movie, or the Hobbit story, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, then you're like, okay, now that the movie's over, I mean, now we get the actual Hobbit trilogy, or the Hobbit movies, here's where those stories came from. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So obviously I don't need to be spoon-fed everything, but like it's, anyway, like little things like that, I'm like, okay, like as someone who came in from like, basically as a, you know, newbie, knowing almost nothing, I would have liked some sort of explanation, but it's not the end of the world, doesn't like taint my experience. It's just like watching the movie for the first time, I'm just like, okay, well, you know, again, it's the end of the world, where is everybody? But now,
I get it.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it, too, is they had to, like, have a reason for the elves and the dwarves to not be able to help, because the entire implication of the end of the story is that the time for the elves is ending, and it's time for, you know, the men to rise up, the race of men. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, like, is a big part of why there couldn't be elves there, and then they just, like, explained it, like, here are the logistics why the elves can't be there, but I totally get you on it.
Yeah. And so another thing, kind of sort of related, and so, Al, this is spoiling Return of the King for you, so
okay,
you're being warned. I've tried to look at the reasoning for this, and I still don't understand. Why the hell was Saruman's death cut from the theatrical version of Return of the King?
Are you referring to the fact that they almost they decided to have Aragorn and Sauron fight in that final battle?
No, sorry. Did I say Sauron? I meant Saruman. Sorry.
Oh, I was like, huh?
See, and that's also a thing. Their names are so damn similar.
They are. Okay, I was like, but we do see Sauron die. He explodes. Okay. No, you're right. That was silly. I don't know how that happened. Like, other than, like, they just said, it needs to be exactly 3 hours and 20 minutes.
So here's my question. Like, currently I have no desire to watch the theatricals, so, like, is Saruman even brought up? If his death isn't a thing?
Nope.
Liz?
No. Oh, I said no.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you cut off or what, but
No, he's not. And the funny thing is, he dies a completely different way in the book, so it just makes it kind of weirder.
well, isn't in the book like they actually go to the Shire and there's a whole like thing going on there?
Yeah, the book Saruman goes to the Shire and enslaves the hobbits, and they have to. And he has like a whole almost army there, and they have to. The hobbits have to fight them, and then he does die the same way. Grima Wormtongue still stabs him in the back.
Literally.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, so that's still how that happens, like the actual moment of his death, but it's in a completely different location under different circumstances.
and that's another thing, like, kind of going back to like stuff from the books that were changed or whatever. Like, I understand why for time, especially why that wasn't included in Return of the King, that whole Shire sequence. Yeah. Like, I would have been curious. I'm curious to see it. Emily, stop. But it's, you know, I understand. It's when it's a 4-hour movie, or I don't know how long the theatrical version was, and you're cutting things for time, or like you just don't have the room for squeezing everything from the books. I understand. So, like, I don't know how you feel about this, but for me, like, it's weird when, you know, we get to the end of Return of the King, and Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin all go back to the Shire, and, you know, since that didn't happen, the Shire acts like, you know, like, because they were, like, unaware of everything that pretty much happened. So it's like, alright, just another day in the Shire for everyone else, and for Frodo, Sam, and the other two, it's like, oh, well, we, like, almost died. Like, we had a life-changing thing happen to us in the world. Mm-hmm. And they're just like, alright, just gotta move on with their lives, I guess. And then the entire Shire is, like, unaware of what they did, pretty much. So it's weird, like, knowing that in the books, the Shire was at risk of being destroyed. But in the movie, it's like, eh.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that scene in the book. I think it's great. And it's cool to see the hobbits, like, come into their own like that. But considering the ending of Lord of the Rings, the movie, I get why it's not there. It sucks. I would have liked to see it, but it was already such a long movie.
Yeah. And I don't mean to sound like I'm being a negative Nancy and cherry picking at the movies. I'm really not. I'm just, like, as a person, I'm just curious, you know, to know, like, why certain things made it in, why certain things didn't, and, like, obviously, like, Liz knows way more about the lore than I do, and so it just, you know, if it sounds like I'm being negative, I promise I'm not, because I wouldn't be talking about these movies if I didn't like them.
I don't think it has to do with what. I think it's just an unfortunate thing when it comes to a lot of films where you have to cut specific things out that don't, you know, necessarily. I guess they're just looking at what. Because I always think of it like this: when it comes to cutting certain scenes out of films, it's always looking at what scene will further the movie's, you know, popularity, or what scene will be the most integral part of the movie that will keep people talking about it, you know, from, like, for times on. Mm-hmm. And I guess in the sense of the Lord of the Rings, since it is like a 4-hour movie, you know, for the theatrical one, they just cut the things that they felt wouldn't be missed, or what some people probably wouldn't even, you know, consider worth talking about. Because I think it's all about the buzz of each individual scene. And sometimes you have to pick the scenes that you think will have the most effect on the audience, as opposed to, you know, the scenes that could easily just be written off and forgotten, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, and it's weird because, like, Lord of the Rings came out in a time where, like, I'm sure there's still a level of, like, studio, like, yeah, interference to a degree, but, like, not to the degree of, obviously, like, The Hobbit, of, like, movies made today. But it is interesting, like, knowing, like, well, what made it initially, what didn't, and, like, how much, you know, Peter Jackson, like, was allowed to do at the time. Because, like, if these movies were made, I feel like, in any other period, they wouldn't be what they are now.
Yeah.
I think so much of what makes them special is because they were made when they were. And
oh yeah.
I don't blame the Hobbit movies for this, but those movies are such overly CGI'd.
Yes.
And I don't hate them, but it does take me out when it's like, I know everything here is computer generated, and like, obviously there's CGI in the Lord of the Rings, but because it was like late 90s, early 2000s, where the technology wasn't entirely there, even then, the movies still look fantastic, even with the CGI. Like Gollum, like, obviously revolutionary. You know, like, that's something that, like, has been talked about, you know, for years. And obviously, it being Andy Serkis, who's, like, you know, pioneer of that stuff. You know, it's crazy to think that was 20 plus years ago, and it still looks that good. It still looks better than most movies made today. It looks better than, like, any Marvel movie. Looks, you know, like, looks better than any DC movie. You know, that may become controversial for some people who listen to us. I'm sorry. But, like, so much fit, like, it just, like, the story ages so well, the visuals age so well, and, like, luckily, as far as I know, none of the actors are really, like, problematic or anything, so it doesn't, like, take me out like certain actors do these days. So it's, like, and also part of it, too, is just, like, knowing that, like, there was so much love and care that went into this, and hearing bits and stuff, like, behind the scenes of just, like, how, like, I remember watching this bit of, like, at one point, the actor who plays Aragorn goes up to the guy who plays Pippin and totally just, like, full-on open-mouth kisses the guy.
Have you seen the video of that?
No, I haven't. I just heard the story.
Right now on YouTube and send it to you. It's so funny.
And then, like, even though, like, obviously I wasn't there when it first happened, but, like, the whole, like, they're taking the hobbits to Isengard thing, that was a thing on YouTube for a while, that, like, that's funny. And then when, you know, during the making of the Hobbit movies, they had Orlando Bloom actually sing it with the video playing in the background.
Rapped. It was so fun. God. The Hobbit movies were coming out when I was, you know, old enough to, like, really care, and they would upload those video diaries of the set, and I was always watching them, like, getting excited for the movies. It was so wonderful. That was a great time.
But you know what's funny? So actually, I remember it was after I graduated high school. My friend and I were hanging out, and we tried watching An Unexpected Journey. And obviously, I knew little to nothing about any of this stuff, clearly. And watching that movie, then the first 10 minutes, I was so damn lost. Because, like, it's... Like, I don't know who Bilbo is. I didn't know who all of a sudden these dwarves are showing up at this guy's house. I'm like, who the hell are these guys? And, like, we ended up turning it off because we're just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, we were so, we were just like, yeah, we're turning this off. We have no idea what's going on here. And I didn't watch it. And then watching it in context, I'm like, okay, I get it. At the same time, the movie gets going very, very quickly in the first Hobbit.
You know, people would disagree with you. That was, like, the main criticism of the movie. Like, people were really critical that it takes too long to get out of the Shire. Now,
really?
Not for me. I love the first Hobbit movie and all of the Shire scenes, because I'm like, give me a whole movie in the Shire.
Same here. Like, that's the thing. I
would watch an hour of the dwarves partying in Bilbo's house. Like, come on. Yeah. I love this. But that was a very strong criticism of the movie, that it took too long to get going. So it's funny how you're like, oh, it got going so fast.
And it's funny because I think you and I also kind of talked about how, like, you know, when I first watched Return of the King, to me it felt like it kind of ended, like, abruptly. And then you're talking about...
Everyone else complains about the ending being too long.
Well, it's for me, like, it's like, we get, you know, Aragorn's ending, we kind of get Frodo's ending, but I feel like we never get, like, the Fellowship's ending. You know what I mean? Like, we get the reunion, and we get the scene of, like, you know, Frodo waking up and seeing everyone, and him seeing Legolas, and him not saying Legolas's name because they only have one line shared.
That's the best scene. Legolas is only friends with Aragorn and Gimli.
Well, and that's the funny thing. Like, does he ever even really talk to the hobbits? Like, ever?
No, they probably annoyed him.
But it's so funny. I remember reading that long after I had watched the trilogy a few times over, seeing like, oh yeah, Legolas and Frodo only had like one line that the entire trilogy. I'm like, no, there's no way. And
like, that's even debatable if they ever spoke at all.
Well, no, and my bow. That's it.
Frodo said nothing to him. Like, that is stretching it.
And it's funny, and like I said too, like at the very end of Return of the King, and Frodo's seeing everyone, he literally says everyone's name except Legolas. At that point, he's like, "Who are you?"
Gimli, Aragorn. Who's that? Who's the blonde guy? Yes, I love that. That's so funny.
And also, now that I'm so aware of the memes and everything now, it's so fun. Like, and especially now, like, knowing the behind the scenes stuff, and like obviously one of the big behind the scenes things is like, why am I blanking on his name? Aragorn's actor, Viggo Mortensen, breaking his toe, kicking the thing in the two towers.
You have to say that every single time you watch it now. Did you know that he broke his toe?
I remember I saw this TikTok
Where
that says like,
oh, Al doesn't know. I will tell him. So the scene at the beginning of it's not the beginning because
it's within 30 minutes of yeah.
But you remember when they're chasing after in the second movie they're chasing after Merry and Pippin, and then they run into all those horse guys, and and they're like, oh, we killed all of those orcs, so sorry, Merry and Pippin are probably dead. So then they ride over there and they find all of the orc corpses, and Aragorn thinks that Merry and Pippin are dead, so he kicks that helmet and screams.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he broke his toe.
Well, because like he had been kicking it so many times, and Peter Jackson wanted a more intense, real scream out of the guy.
And then he did when he broke his toe.
Wow.
And then I think I read something like Orlando Bloom got injured at one point, but then he was back on set like the next day or the day after or something like that.
Yeah, I think I heard about that too.
But yeah, it's just like so funny, like being in that stuff now, especially like I'm on TikTok, so I see a lot of like Lord of the Rings stuff come my way, and whenever I do, I send them to Liz. I don't know if she's seen them ever, but so I don't care if she does, because I feel like she's the only person I really geek out about this stuff with. My wife never seen Lord of the Rings, absolutely doesn't care, and it's once I told my wife that was my new obsession, she was like, no. Because she knows how much I'm into like DC stuff. So now that I have something else, she's like, "Good God."
So wait. So the scream that he let out was basically real?
Yes.
I mean, I think he was also committing like to the scene and probably also thinking, "Oh, I think I broke my toe."
Well, it's okay, kind of like that Leo DiCaprio scene in Django Unchained, where like he breaks the glass and the glass goes into his hand, like, and that actually happened. He's actually bleeding, but he carries on with the scene anyway. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great scene with Viggo.
Oh yeah. And Viggo is like, obviously he's a lot of people's favorite parts of the movies. But
well, yeah, he's so hot.
That's not what I was gonna say.
It's true though. He's butt ugly in the books, but I'm glad they made him.
Well, that's the funny thing is like,
is he?
I mean, okay, it's kind of implied that he's not good looking because I think at some point, like, Frodo says something that implies he's not really handsome, which is just kind of funny.
But it's funny because if you look at like there's like the really old like animated Lord of the Rings, that's very much the case in that he's not good looking at all.
Yeah. Yep. But I think that they did a good job making him quite handsome, but also, like, dirty. You can see how he can fly under the radar. He's not, like, beautiful.
And it is funny, so, like, I've watched, like, certain people, like, react to Lord of the Rings for the first time, like, on YouTube since I started watching, and seeing some people, like, there's this one guy that I watch, and he reacted to the movies, and he's watching through Two Towers, and, like, obviously, if and talking about Aragorn, there's a whole thing with him and Arwen, which I think is beautiful. Arwen's a fantastic character. I'm team Arwen all the way.
Oh God, let's not do this love triangle thing.
But Eowyn. So this guy who's watching the movies, he sees them have chemistry, and he's like, you know what? I buy it. And he's like, you know what? Okay, for my listeners or for my people watching, if they end up together at the end of the movie, then we'll have a bet or something. And literally within 5 minutes, he's like, oh shit, I forgot about Arwen. Well, because it goes from like the scene of like Aragorn like trying her terrible stew or whatever to like him or like the whole dream thing with Arwen, and the guy was like, oh no, I totally forgot. But also another great character, yeah, Arwen's fantastic. Liv Tyler, holy shit.
Yeah.
I'd only seen her in like The Incredible Hulk. That was the only thing I'd ever seen her in up until Lord of the Rings. She is so damn good as Arwen. It's like not even funny.
Wait, is that the elf girl who was like, if you want him, you have to go through me?
Yeah.
If you want him, come and claim him. That's the line.
Okay.
Nick, like, here's the exact quote.
Well, that's one of my favorite scenes in Fellowship. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, again, back to like adapting.
Yeah, I know that was a different elf in the book, right?
Oh yeah, but I was gonna say that's a change that doesn't bother me at all. I know it's a controversial one because Glorfindel, which I totally get, is a character that people want to see on screen. I do too. I hope he's in the Amazon series so bad. I really want to see him. But Glorfindel is like such a funny Tolkien character because he's like this super mega ultra powerful elf who doesn't ever really have like a long story. He just like will pop up in random books and stories and do something really dramatic and then leave. Like that's kind of he's just like someone there to do something really important and then he dips out. Like that's kind of his whole thing. So while it would have been really cool to see him in the movies, because Al, if you don't know, basically Arwen doesn't do that. This character called Glorfindel does, who's another elf.
Okay.
She doesn't rescue Frodo. Glorfindel does. But I get why they changed that because it was like in a movie, from a movie perspective, introducing Glorfindel for one scene and then he never comes back or does anything to help again, it would feel kind of weird. Whereas with Arwen, it's like, oh well, this is Aragorn's, girlfriend. Like of course, we would want to see a little bit more of her. Like she's really not in the books very much. So like, yeah, I like that they gave her something to do in that scene, and then gave her more of a character arc. To me, that's a change that makes a lot of sense, rather than just like seeing her once in the first movie and then like not seeing her at all, and then like third one, oh, they're married, because she would feel like, oh, tacked on,
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Like, I obviously like it's. I don't know how sacrilegious this might be to like some Tolkien fans, but like,
oh, very.
Like she should have been way more prominent, I think.
Who? Sorry?
Arwen.
Arwen, yeah, no, I agree. I'll bitch about Tolkien and women all day. No, listen, I mean, like, occasionally, like I've said this before, Tolkien would sometimes write something really fucking cool about a woman, but it's like always on accident. Like it never feels like he did it on purpose. Like it's just like, oh, I stumbled into something semi-progressive about women. Oops. But he did. With Arwen, no, he didn't really do that. Like Arwen is like, I think the idea of her in the books is cool, but he doesn't write anything about her. So I like that the movies did. Sorry, sue me. Like
my only question, so like I don't know if this is a movie thing or a book thing. So when Elrond keeps saying that, oh, Arwen is dying, what does that mean? Because that's another thing that I feel like the movie doesn't explain the best.
You're right, it doesn't. And that's something that's not really in the book. So it's kind of, I think we just all have to interpret it our own ways. I'll put it this way. Elves can die of a broken heart. That's canon.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
Arwen's investment in Aragorn's fate, as well as like her love of the world. If the world ended, she'd probably be sad. So they imply like, oh, her fate is tied with the ring. I think that's like a little bit of a stretch. They were just trying to give this more stakes. But really, I think she's dying. Really, I think because of loss. Because of if Aragorn dies, she would die of a broken heart because that's an elf thing. Elves die of broken hearts because they're babies, I guess. So because they're really dramatic, the elves. So that's kind of my interpretation, that her sorrow is just overtaking her, and she would die. That's it. I don't really know what the movie's intended because it's not a book thing. I don't really get it 100%. I'm just willing to roll with it.
Gotcha.
Right.
Because I knew that. I can't remember for sure whether that was a book thing or not. So it's just like it's weird because like the elves, as far as we know, are immortal. So it's like, you know, again, the movie doesn't explain this the best, like I said. So it's like, okay, so Arwen's an immortal elf. So like, and we know the elves can die in battle, but she's dying because reasons. It's just kind of like the gist of what I got the first time watching. And like, it's fine. It's something I can forgive. And that's the thing with like this movie compared to other movies, that like little things like that I question and kind of sort of bother me, I could easily forgive because it doesn't affect the overall quality of the movie or the story. It's, you know, it's a little, I don't want to say irritating or anything. It's just like, it's just one of those movie things that you're like, okay, well, like, what's this thing here and why is it here? And
yeah.
Okay, we're not talking about it. Okay, we're moving on. Okay, whatever. And then you don't really think about it again until, like, unless you're like me and you rewatch these movies every other week. Which is why I have a lot of these questions, because I keep watching the movies and keep being like, okay, well, why is this here? Why is this here? Why is this here?
No, yeah, I get that. And I will say that, like, the whole thing with Arwen, and not just that part, but they don't really explain really well the whole choosing a mortal life versus choosing to live as a mortal. That's pretty confusing, and I didn't get it for a long time, and I'm still not sure I totally get it.
So is that also a movie creation and not in the book?
No, that's in the books, actually. The gist there, because actually Elrond made the choice too. Elves that aren't fully elf, like Galadriel, for example, is fully elf. She has no human in her at all. But Elrond is part. He is. I'm pretty sure he has mortal in him. He's not a fully elf. I don't remember if his father or his mother was a human. I don't remember. And so when he was younger, you know, when he was like 1,000 years old, he got to choose if he wanted to live as a mortal or as an elf. And he chose to live as an elf. And his brother chose to live as a human. And that is where Aragorn's line comes from. And that's also why that line is so special and why they live long. So they live a little longer. They don't, but by that I mean they live to like 200. They don't live to be 50 bajillion like elves. So Elrond chose to be an elf, and so when he had children, his children were also part mortal, and they got to make the same decision. He had sons that we don't see in the movies, and they all chose to be elves. And Arwen, we see in the movies more so, but it happens in the book too. She has to make the decision if she wants to be a mortal or an elf. And she chooses to be mortal because of Aragorn.
Gotcha. So Arwen, as far as we know, Arwen, after the events of the book / movies, Arwen dies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she does. I don't... Yeah, she dies after Aragorn, because again, I think that like, if you are an elf who chooses to be mortal, you still get to live a little extra longer. Like, you don't die at 90, you die at, like, you know, a couple hundred. And also, Arwen was already quite old when she made the decision. I don't know. The logistics of choosing is kind of confusing.
So here's I have a question here. Since Arwen is clearly very much older than Aragorn.
Oh God.
Is she technically grooming him when they meet?
No. Okay. Okay. I'm pretty sure oh god, this is terrible.
You weren't expecting that question, were you?
No, because I've seen this discussed. Okay, listen. Arwen was not a young woman when she met Aragorn. She was probably like a few hundred at least. But she did not meet Aragorn as a child. I will say this. She did not meet him as a child. I know Aragorn was raised in Rivendell, but she did not meet him when he was a kid. Thank God, because that's
so was she like? Are we to assume she was just like off in the world at that point in time?
Okay, so fun fact: Galadriel is Arwen's grandmother.
Really? I didn't know.
Yeah, that's not really in the movies. Yeah, Elrond's wife is Galadriel's daughter, and she should be in the Amazon series. Yay, I'm excited. Yeah, Galadriel, I think, Galadriel is Arwen's grandmother. So it's possible, this might actually be canon, that Arwen was there for a while, and then at some point Aragorn, when he was an adult, a fully functioning adult, crossed paths, and they were like, oh, they're hot. And yes, was Arwen hundreds of years older than him, and he was probably like 20? Yeah, but like, this is a problem with all immortal and human relationships and anything. Okay, we can talk about Twilight again.
No. The funny thing about that.
No.
It is on Netflix. Well, no. I'm just saying. I mean, you were the one who brought up immortals and humans.
Oh wait, there is one thing I have to ask.
Oh no.
So,
yes.
There was the games, like Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War.
Yes.
Like, where do those take place? In like the canon.
I don't really know. I never played them.
Oh.
Yeah, I've never played them. They're not really canon. Okay, I don't think they're canon at all. I think they're based on some events. Here, I can like Google it. I'm sure it would tell me pretty quickly. They're definitely based on some things that Tolkien wrote. But they're not like, very... It's his story, that is for sure. Okay, I'm looking now. It looks like it's set in the Second Age. And it looks like it's actually kind of... It has some of what we're going to see in the Amazon TV series. It's not... I assume the Amazon show will be a lot closer to what Tolkien wrote. But it's like Second Age period when Sauron was first creating the rings. That's the gist.
Oh, okay.
So here's my question, and like I don't know if the books delve into this much. So at the end of Return of the King, kind of spoiler for Al, but it's not that big a deal. By the end of Return of the King, that's the beginning of the Fourth Age, right?
Yeah.
So how does the world know when an age begins? Like one day's a Tuesday. All right, guys, we're in a brand new age here.
New era. Who this?
I mean, can't you say that about our world? Like, oh, how did they know when the Dark Ages were over? Did everyone just say, okay, they're over?
Well, no, it's just like... Do they communicate that just like they're from like town to town, being like, "Hey guys, just FYI, we're in a new age. Make sure you change your calendars appropriately." Like,
what? New age already?
That's such a fun question. Are you asking this because Frodo says in his writings that we're in the Fourth Age?
Yes.
Okay, like then that just bothered you. Okay, well, I will say that. That happens. Frodo didn't go into the Grey Havens, to the Undying Lands, until like quite a while after the ring was destroyed, like at least 10 years.
Well, at that point, like didn't like Sam and Rosie and their kids live in Bag End with them?
Yes, they had a polyamorous relationship. They were all together. Thank you. I'm sorry, we haven't gotten into Frodo and Sam are in love, and also Sam was married to Rosie, and he was with Frodo. That was the relationship. they together. Anyway, so that is canon. Before like I didn't. That's not. They're cowards. That was in the books. They all live together. Anyway, well, okay. Like Nick, to answer that kind of funny question, I don't really think there is an answer other than like Tolkien decided it's the fourth age now, and generally in Middle Earth, an age ends with some really dramatic battle. At the end of the first age, it's the War of Wrath, which was fought against the equivalent of Satan. And at the end of the second age, it was the Last Alliance that we see at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring. And at the end of the third age, it's the destruction of the ring. And so they were like, okay, well, every time something really dramatic happens, it's time for a new age.
Okay, that's actually a pretty good answer.
Okay.
But yeah, other than that, like, I feel like, you know, when I finally got to the end of Return of the King, like, I know, like, we kind of touched on it, how, like, people think that, oh, there's too many endings, it goes on for too long. I think, as far as the movies go, it wraps up really well. Obviously, Al hasn't finished it, so he can't really give much of an opinion here. But overall, just how everything wraps up, I think, even though I think that I would have liked a little more of, like, just, like, one more scene of, like, the fellowship together that's not just them seeing Frodo wake up, I would have liked a little more. Beyond that, I think it's pretty much the closest thing to a perfect film trilogy that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you about the ending, because to me it's like, if you gave me more, I'd be like, yay, there's more. Other people don't agree with me, because they think movies have to be 2 hours now. That's a new thing. But I would have liked, because this is in the book, and I think it's quite a lovely scene or thing that happens, is I think everyone minus Boromir, obviously, from the Fellowship, I think they all kind of, they all go to Rohan to bury Theoden together, and then I think they go a little bit further, and then that's when they all kind of part ways, the whole Fellowship, and we see Gimli and Legolas go off together because they're in love as well, and they I'm sorry that they literally run off together to go on forest adventures. That's what happens. I didn't write it, Tolkien did, and so those two go off together, and I thought that would have been a really nice ending, I think, actually, for those two characters, because Gimli and Legolas get the short end of the ending stick, I would say. Like,
I agree.
We don't really... We only see them at the coronation, and then they're just kind of gone. I think it would have been quite lovely to see those two, like, their ending be them going off together as friends. I think that would have been pretty beautiful. Mm-hmm. So, and just all of the Fellowship kind of parting ways. So I agree with you. I would have also liked one more scene of the Fellowship, and the book provides one that's quite lovely. So it's a shame that they didn't include it, but again, everyone complains about the ending being too long, so I guess I guess we're wrong.
I'm obviously, like, I'm a fan of Zack Snyder's movies, so I'm not with the general consensus of most people anyways. Give me more. I don't care. As long as it's good, give me, like, 15, 14, however many hours it takes to tell the best story possible. And if that means I'm sitting here for majority of a day, or if not a whole day, watching these movies, so be it. I don't care. Like, if I had the time and was able to, I would literally watch the trilogy, at least in its entirety, every other day of the week.
Yeah. I get you. I would too.
Because literally, how often I watch is like, I watch 1 week, I try to watch the entire trilogy, and then the following week I take a little bit of break, maybe watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, and then the following week I repeat the same cycle. So literally, for the entirety of 2021, I've either been watching Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, or Zack Snyder's Justice League. Not much new content in between there. And it's just, I've mentioned this before, but I really do thank Liz for finally convincing me to watch these movies, because I was so just, like, ready to be like, okay, these are going to be boring as hell, but I'm just going to give it a shot anyway. and I'm so glad that I was proven wrong.
Yay.
There seriously are some of my favorite movies that I've ever seen, and it's, I know, like, Liz doesn't agree with me, but it's still, just for me personally, it's so hard to choose between Zack Snyder's movies and these movies, just for me personally, just because of how much Zack's movies have meant to me over the years. And Lord of the Rings is just so new. Maybe in time I'll feel differently, but just right now it's hard to choose, because it's like choosing between like a newborn child and your parent. Like, how do you make that decision?
No, I get.
You don't.
For me, it's opposite though, because Zack's movies would never have a chance against Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings raised me.
Pretty much.
Yeah, like, and Zack's one of my favorite directors, and I'm always gonna love. Like, I would love to see him direct an episode of the Amazon series. Oh my god, that would be like a dream come true. Because he always talks about Lord of the Rings. I would love to see him dabble in it. So if that could ever happen, if anyone's listening, that would be great. But yeah, I mean, it's unlikely that he'll ever make a movie that I like as much as Lord of the Rings. But that's just because no one will ever make a movie that I like as much as Lord of the Rings.
And again, I think that goes back to like what I was saying earlier, like that it was such like a lightning in a bottle for those movies to be made when they were made and how they were made.
I know, thank God. Well, I do ask you this then, Nick. How do you feel about more movies and shows coming out of Tolkien's works? I'm curious.
So obviously, like, I already knew the Amazon show was coming before watching these movies. Now that I'm like, this is me post watching the movies, I'm really curious. Like, I have no idea what to expect, and I'm excited by that. But I will say though, just because it's freshly announced, it's something kind of familiar to me. That new anime movie that they just announced, War of the Rohirrim.
Yeah.
That sounds really exciting to me. Like,
yeah.
I'm seriously, I'm so jazzed about that. And obviously, like, not everything has to be connected. Not everything has to be one big cinematic universe kind of thing. So, like, if the Amazon show has no ties whatsoever to the movies, fine. It probably won't. Fine, whatever. I'll be a little bummed, but whatever. But at least with the anime movie, it's written by one of the writers of the movies. It's. I think they said it takes place in the same.
I think the only way that's gonna matter is that, like, the Helm's Deep and Rohan designs are kind of the same. There won't be any characters, most likely. I guess that Gandalf can pop up, but like, he's not really around that area at the time, so I don't know why he would. But the only way that's really going to matter is, like, literally the design of the locations. Otherwise, there's no real connection.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's the nice thing about Lord of the Rings. Like, yes, like, there are books to go off of, but the lore is so deep and it's so vast. They can really do pretty much anything there, and so there really is no, like, restriction as far as, like, when you can tell your stories or how you can tell your stories and, like, how many times you can tell us. It's it can go literally anywhere in that world, and I'm really excited for the Amazon show. I hope it's good. I have seen some people being wary of it on Twitter, and, like, obviously, like, I haven't been following the show as long as other people have, so I don't know if there's any, like, behind the scenes drama or, like, what's going on there. So I'll wait to see the show when it premieres. But it's for me, being a new fan, it's exciting that I have new Lord of the Rings content to look forward to. Because I will say, after I finished the Hobbit trilogy, I was like, wow, it feels weird that, like, I'm kind of done with Middle Earth for now.
Yeah, and it is crazy to feel that way, because Tolkien really wrote so much that all of it can never be adapted. That's how many stories he wrote. Like, it would be impossible to adapt every single thing. So it is strange to think, oh wow, there's nothing more coming out about that. However, I will say, I don't want the Tolkien cinematic universe. I really don't. That sounds like my worst nightmare. Like, because we were just saying, like, we were really lucky that they were made when they were made, so that they could be as long as they wanted and not, like, have a certain kind of humor that I can't stand.
Marvel.
Yeah, and they were not like this. They were not made as this big franchise, you know. Like
they were made as.
You can see some of that in the Hobbit movies, unfortunately, and I love those movies. I do. They're a special place in my heart, despite how flawed they are.
Yeah, agreed.
So, for me, I don't want them to be like, okay, we're about to adapt every word Tolkien ever wrote, and we're going to make a franchise out of this, everything. Mm-hmm. I don't want it. Like, I would much rather the Tolkien estate, as stingy as they've always been, I want them to keep being stingy, honestly. I want them to say, okay, sometimes we can let you make something out of his work, but you better, like, make us believe that you're really going to love it and respect it and do your best, or the answer's no. Like, that's how I want.
So
in
on that subject of the Tolkien estate, I know that they've been wary of the Lord of the Rings movies. Mm-hmm. What's their overall consensus of the whole Hobbit situation?
What's sorry?
Their whole, like, what are their feelings on the whole Hobbit movie situation?
I really don't know. I'm sure they didn't like them because they didn't like Lord of the Rings. And well, okay, that's like Christopher Tolkien didn't like Lord of the Rings. He was like the head of the Tolkien estate.
But now, like, one of the new heads, who's like the grandson, he says he loves the movie. So it's like
like some of them like them, some of them don't. I don't know about the Hobbit movies. I don't know if they ever talked about them. I get it if they didn't. But they didn't have any control over that adaptation. Like when it was actually funny enough, it was Tolkien himself that sold the movie rights. You know, like it wasn't any of his children. He did it like back in the 60s, I think, like to pay some bills or something. Like so, and that was how we got the animated movies way back when. And he sold both Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. But for so long, it was like, okay, we can only make movies out of those books. Like, only Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Like, no one had the rights to any of his other works at all. Not a word. So when the Amazon series was announced, that was like a big deal because that was the first time the Tolkien estate had like moved an inch on letting anyone adapt another word of the work. Mm-hmm. And so that seems like it might be continuing with this War of the Rohirrim movie, but like I said, I hope they're still being stingy about it and not just gonna like, here, sell all of the rights to all of his works, like, just make whatever you want. Like, no, please don't sell Warner Brothers the rights to everything. That sounds like such a bad idea.
No, yeah, I get you. And it's...
especially Warner Brothers, jeez.
Oh, God, I know. And that's the thing, like, now, like, because, obviously, we're fans of Zack Snyder's movies here, so we know how terrible Warner Brothers is as a company. Mm-hmm. So, now, once I learned what happened with the Hobbit movies, I'm like, wow, that really doesn't surprise me. Mm-hmm. Well, because Warner Brothers, because they had bought New Line after they had made Lord of the Rings, right?
I think so.
Yeah. And I think it's... obviously, it's one of the biggest examples of studio interference is those movies. Because, like, those movies could be 2 movies at most. It didn't need to be 3.
Yep.
But I still appreciate the trilogy. I do. It is nice to have, like, 3 movies of Lord of the Rings and 3 movies of The Hobbit. Like, it is nice having that. But at the same time, that it sucks because you're taking one book and you're splitting it into 3 things it didn't need to be. And I love the first Hobbit movie. I love Desolation of Smaug. I appreciate Battle of the Five Armies. That has a lot of good moments that I like in there. Obviously, the Thorin and Bilbo Acorn scene is one of my favorite Middle-earth scenes ever.
Yeah. And his death scene, oh my god.
That too. And then just like, I know it doesn't match up 100% perfectly, but for me personally, the final scene of Battle of the Five Armies, the last scene of the trilogy, I think the closing credits music, I think I prefer over the final scene / ending credits of Lord of the Rings.
Whoa. Oh, whoa, that's a bold statement.
I know it is. I really... well, here's the thing. I feel like the closing song of Battle of the Five Armies and the closing song of Return of the King, in tone, they're very, very similar. Like, they sound a lot alike. But to me personally, I really like hearing Billy Boyd's voice singing the song. You know, like it's for me. I think part of the reason why I like it a little more is because at that point I'm like, wow, this is like it for me. This is the last time I'm seeing a Lord of the Rings or Hobbit trilogy for the first time. So this is my ending. This is, you know, closing, you know, for lack of a better phrase, this is like me closing that book, you know. But I appreciate I appreciate the music in the Lord of the Rings, and obviously like Hobbit got a little bit more mainstream because they got like Ed Sheeran, you know.
Oh, I love that song.
Oh, I love it too.
And especially like hearing it in the theater when that cliffhanger happened, I was like, "Oh my god!" Big moment.
Yeah, so I really like those, and that's the thing. Like the ending songs of Fellowship and Two Towers don't resonate as much with me as that song and the closing song of Battle of the Five Armies. The third one, I just bought it on my phone from Return of the King. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I'll pull it up here in a sec.
Into the West.
Dang it! As I saw it, Into the West. Into the West is very good. It's so close to the one from The Hobbit, but for me personally, The Hobbit edges out for me just a little more. But the music is all very great. Those songs are great. Howard Shore, fantastic score across the board of all 6 movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Shire theme might be one of my favorite themes of all time of any movie.
So good.
And the way it carries from movie to movie, and then like the way it builds up in Return of the King, when Al, please watch and finish the movie soon, because it's like obviously we've spoiled some things, but there's just some moments you really need to experience to feel the full effect, to get all the emotion in the build up. It's like literally the first like 4 or 5 times I watched the trilogy, when the coronation scene happens and it comes to the Aragorn and the 4 hobbits, I legit cried.
Yep.
Seriously, some of the best filmmaking I've ever seen. It's just fantastic, and there's so much about that I love. Here's the thing: there's not a single character in these movies that I dislike. As far as like how they're written and all that stuff, like obviously there are characters that you don't root for, which is obvious in these movies. Stories. But like as far as like how they're portrayed, there's not a single person that I feel was miscast. There's not a single person I feel like didn't deliver. I feel like everyone did their job phenomenally, if not at least great.
Well, who are both your favorite characters? To ask a really basic question.
Sam's up there,
of course.
But I hate that this is gonna sound like such a cliche answer, but I love Aragorn so much as a character.
Well, duh.
It's just also Arwen is up there. Arwen is also up there. She needs more time, but yeah.
Mhm. Al?
I would say Gandalf.
Ooh, yeah.
Is one.
Mm-hmm.
Gandalf, and I guess it's like a mix of the two. It was Gandalf, and I also liked because now they have to come in pairs. Sam and Frodo.
Yeah.
I can't like one over the other. I just got to have them both as a pair.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked Bobo.
Excuse me?
Wait, hold up.
Hobo Baggins?
Oh, Bilbo.
Did you say Hobo Baggins?
He said Bobo.
I said Bobo first, and then I said Hobo. I know it had something to do with an O at the end. Bilbo Baggins, I mean.
Well, I also love Bilbo, because I love that Bilbo was able to give up the ring. That's such a great scene.
Oh, yeah. Because, like he had that ring for, like, years.
Yeah, like, maybe like 50 years? 60? Yeah, 60, I think. I think The Hobbit confirms that.
Oh.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, he had a long time.
Also, Ian, I want to say, like, the late great Ian Holm was so. He was so good as Bilbo, and like. It's funny seeing Bilbo in The Hobbit versus Bilbo in Lord of the Rings, because I do feel like it's... I obviously, it's the same character, and I don't think there's, like, the writing says otherwise. Because obviously sometimes you see one younger version of a character and the older version, and it's such a leap that it's not actually good writing. But it's... There's something about older Bilbo that I really appreciate. And, like, especially when he's, like, preparing to say goodbye to Frodo, and he's like... I'm not a good person, like, I'm selfish, like, I didn't mean to take you in when your parents died, but, you're a good Baggins and all that stuff, like, obviously I'm paraphrasing, but that was a really good moment.
Yeah, I love older Bilbo as well.
Yeah, it's just, I just love the Shire. And I will say, though, like, as someone who absolutely hated Pippin the first movie, I really appreciate Pippin after the fact.
Good.
Because, I will say, though, seriously, Pippin was so stupid in the first one. Like...
Okay, listen, he's just a baby.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Because I was saying that when I first watched this movie, I hate these two so much.
I will say that, like, in retrospect, Merry is not nearly as bad as Pippin in any of the movies. He does encourage the behavior a little bit, but he's not as bad as Pippin as far as decisions making.
But what about lunch? There's not going to be any lunch. What about afternoon breakfast?
You're both like, oh, he's so annoying complaining about food. Like, you guys wouldn't be complaining about food. Aragorn was, like, being rough. Like, he was like, we're walking 8 hours straight, no breaks. Like, you know it.
Like, no breakfast? No second breakfast? No afternoon breakfast?
Listen, he's had his routine his whole life. Let him be. He was hungry.
The fact that I watched this movie not expecting them to live that long says a lot.
That's fair. In a horror movie, they would be the first to die.
Yeah, as I was watching the movie, I was like, okay, these two are gonna... They're dead, right? They're gonna die at some point, right? Come to find out, oh wow, it's the first movie ended and they're still not dead.
Pippin makes some bad decisions, but Pippin's very
bad.
Listen,
bad.
The skeleton thing was an accident.
Oh
my god. He didn't do it on purpose.
Just saying, half of their problems probably wouldn't have happened if not for...
Listen to me. If Merry and Pippin didn't come on the journey, the whole world would have ended. They had to come. They're heroes. Let's do that.
Heroes. That's a little pushing it. But I don't know. I have. I was going to say that. Well, I guess I have to watch the rest of the movie to see.
So watch the rest of the movies. You can't talk. You've seen movie 1.
And half of movie 2.
Yeah, but the second half is really important as far as Merry and Pippin go.
Oh wait. Whoa. Because of the tree people, right?
Yes, I love them.
Okay.
I'm glad you've met them already.
Okay, so the tree people.
Okay.
Okay.
Love you, be safe.
They're cool pair.
Okay, so wait. So, I'm trying to remember. Because I'm thinking about all this stuff that I have heard over the years about Lord of the Rings stuff, which is very, very small. Okay, so I'm trying to understand. So, are all of the different species, like, they're all separated from each other, right?
Humans or animals?
Like, no, like humans, elves, dwarves, hobbits. Like, are they all like segregated from each other by just the way of the world, or do they just choose to separate themselves?
Oh, you mean like them all living in different locations?
Yeah. Like, could an elf live in a hobbit's, like, colony? Or...
I mean, they'd have to crouch down the entire time, but it's possible.
I wish an elf would move into the Shire. I don't know, like, the deep lore answer to that. There might not be one, I would imagine. Well, certainly the dwarves and elves live apart, because there's, like, centuries-old beef there.
Okay.
But there's some, I think we see in The Hobbit a little bit that, like, dwarves and humans kind of, like, intermingle more. I mean, like, they're not, like, dating. I mean, I guess it could be. But,
wait, could an elf date a hobbit?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, if they really want to, like, nothing prevents them from marrying or dating each other, other than just like societal and cultural.
Right.
Know.
An elf can. So can an elf dirty word a hobbit? I have to say dirty word because I follow Twitter. I've seen the controversy of these characters doing adult dirty things, and I have to be very specific.
Listen, yes, I think it do anyone in Middle Earth. The most common way we hear about it is the elves and humans intermixing. Yes. There's been plenty of elves and human banging over the centuries in Middle Earth.
Which is how we get Aragorn.
That's how we get Aragorn, exactly. And that's what he ends up doing with Arwen. So we have that, of course. But like pulling back, like what's your original question? I think, like I said, I think there's some places where there's intermingling of the races, the species, or whatever you want to call them. But generally, they live kind of separately. Say that's mostly by choice. Again, I don't really know the lore answer. There might be one. I don't know what it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's like she said.
Yeah,
like I will say, so like there is something that happens in the Hobbit movies that doesn't happen in the Hobbit book regarding that question, kind of not to like the dirty word specifically, but they delve into that sort of question.
Okay. So, because I noticed... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Because I noticed, like, Legolas?
Yes.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. So I noticed Legolas and it was in the first movie. Like, they had beef with each other for some reason.
Oh, Gimli.
Yeah, Gimli.
Gimli.
Like, is that like societal, or does just Gimli treat everyone like that?
Okay, listen. I hate when people are like, "Oh, Gimli's treating the elves badly." Listen, the elves suck.
Oh no, I already knew the elves suck. I saw the first movie. They're kind of dicks.
Yes, they are, and the dwarves are fun. Maybe the elves should try that. Anyway, yeah, the dwarves and elves certainly live apart because a lot of the dwarves and elves don't like each other. And we get part of the explanation in the Hobbit movies, but even that isn't like the true reason. There's other reasons too, going way back. Like, I think there's kind of an implication that they've always had a dislike of each other, but then there's like, oh, one time they fought a war 10,000 years ago, and, it's one of those things. So, there's certainly a lot of baggage between the elves and the dwarves. They don't really trust each other. There are dwarf and elf friendships over, there are exceptions that happens a couple times. Legolas and Gimli are one of them. But, yeah, dwarves and elves don't get along in Middle-earth.
Oh, okay.
But that's the only one that's, like, there's any real problems there that I can think of. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, I guess. But, I mean, like, the humans and elves are pretty fine. Like, there's some issues sometimes, but the only ones that, like, are really, like, we don't like each other are dwarves and elves.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And also, in the world at large, doesn't really pay attention to or care about the hobbits, really, so...
Yeah, oh yeah. Like, it's so funny. This happens...
Oh, yeah, I was like, jeez. Like, these people are the most ignored people.
There's this really funny post I saw once, which was like, oh, I'll give some it's Sauron, like, oh, Sauron's going to give rings to the elves and rings to the men and rings to the dwarves, but the hobbits are like, oh, none for us, okay. Like, well, I have dominion over all of the races of Middle-earth, and they're like, oh, wow, none for us. Like, we're just excluded from this. It's so, in the book, this happens a little bit in the movies, but in the book it's even more so, like, no one knows what hobbits are. Everyone's always like, what is this? they're the cryptids of Middle Earth.
Okay.
Yeah, no one knows what hobbits are. They're
just
just like
tiny people with big feet.
Yeah, the small people with big feet that kind of just mind their own business, and like meanwhile there's 1,000 wars raging all around them, and they're just watering their plants.
I will say though, the one thing the movie does really well is tell exactly who and what the hobbits are. Because, like, the elves, there's so many unanswered questions. The dwarves, there's a lot of unanswered questions. But the hobbits, after the first 10 minutes of Fellowship, you know exactly who they are.
Yeah. I was as I was watching the movie, I was like, oh my god, I would love to live in the Shire.
Right?
Like, all you gotta do is just, like, you wake up, you farm, you fuck around and just play around with everyone.
Here's the thing.
Big ass dinner.
Here's the thing. If I ever win the lottery, and this is in a couple years now, post COVID, I'll fly the three of us to New Zealand so we can all visit the Hobbiton.
Please, I've always wanted to go.
So basically, I don't know. Do you know what that is, Al?
New Zealand?
No, Hobbiton.
Hobbiton. Is that where
It's the part of the Shire.
Oh, is that where they filmed it?
Yes, so it's where they filmed the movies, but then it became like a tourist attraction after they went back to film the Hobbit movies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what's it called?
Hobbiton.
Oh, Hobbiton.
Like Hobbit on.
Oh.
Sometimes Tolkien's really funny about his naming of things.
Like sometimes it's like really, really intricate, and then Mount Doom.
I know, exactly. He either was like, this is a name descended from 10,000 other people, and it's all culminating in this one name, and then it's Mount Doom.
Lake Town.
Lake Town. I love Lake Town. It's like Lake Town. It's a town on a lake.
But yeah, I think you actually made that tweet like a few months ago, and I thought it was so damn funny.
It's so true, though. He's just like, sometimes like, Rivendell, Lothlorien, Mordor, and then Lake Town.
At the very least, like with Hobbiton, like, it's like a suburb of the Shire, so it's not like that's what he's calling all of Hobbit land, But yeah, the other ones, that's, like, come on. Like, I feel like he came up with all those names, and, like, he was on the very last bit of naming all of them. He's like, I'm so tired. Okay, Mount Doom. Lake Town.
Mount Doom is the funniest. I'm sorry. It's like, what? You'd think it would, like, of all things, that volcano would have the most dramatic name.
I know.
It's Mount. Listen,
but yeah, and it's funny because, like, there are definitely elements of the first movie that are, like, almost, I don't want to say, like, wink at the camera level cheese, but it's, like on the nose cheese, like, stuff like that, or, like, the one where it's, like, you are the Fellowship of the Ring, and it's, like, okay, like, you're saying the title of the movie, okay, we get it. Yep. Still a great scene, but, like, I feel like Fellowship of the three has the most of those, like, cheesier moments where, like, as they go on, I feel like they get a little more dramatic. And that's the thing. The movies, like, the tones of the trilogy are so, consistent and good. Like, there's levity, there's lightness, there's humor. It all balances each other out so well that most movies today absolutely can't do.
Yep, I agree.
And, like, obviously, like, we're in an age now where, like, everything's a cinematic universe and everything is going off what Marvel does, so everything has to be funny. Like, it was so refreshing to find something new, obviously new for me, but, it's older than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that has all the things that I love. It has dark, serious stories, but also really light and like make you feel good aspects of the story. And then you also have things that are just genuinely funny. Like Gimli has some of the best lines in the trilogy. He's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Like,
And a lot of the humor you wouldn't expect it, but a decent amount of it is adapted from the books, because those books are funnier than they're given credit for a lot of the time. Like how Legolas and Gimli, you won't know this, Al, because you've only watched a movie and a half, but you need to finish them, Al.
I will.
Okay, but you know how Gimli and Legolas have like their little counting competition, like in battle, like who can kill the most orcs.
I don't think he's gotten there yet. He might not have gotten there yet.
Anyway, that's the book. You wouldn't think that that's a book thing, but their little counting the orcs we kill competition is in the book. So, like, they adapt the humor from the books really well, and it never feels overwhelming, thank God.
So it's funny, so, like, right before we started recording, I was watching Return of the King, and I got to the point where, like, they're talking about their plan to, basically give Frodo and Sam time to destroy the ring, so they're going to create a distraction by meeting them at the Black Gate. And then Gimli's like, no chance of what did he say?
It's small chances. Wait, no, certainty of death. Small
little chance of success. What are we waiting for?
That's a great scene.
Like, obviously, like, a lot of movies have that kind of moment, but, like, there's something about the way that Gimli says it that makes it funny, but also, like, endearing, kind of.
Yeah, that's an iconic line. It's great.
There's just so many moments like that really work. Like, the humor, these movies, again, when they're funny, they're really funny. And, like, obviously, like, at this point, because, like, I think a lot of movies, like, now, I feel like I've taken a lot of that humor from The Lord of the Rings, like the drinking contest at the beginning of Return of the King. Is that what it is?
Yes, it is.
And then, like, Legolas is like, oh, I'm feeling a tingle in my fingers, and then Gimli was like, you can't hold your liquor, and then passes out.
I have to send you something about that too. Let me try to find it.
Oh, no.
like just an incorrect quotes kind of thing from that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That's a great scene, though.
I will say, though, so, like, I know you've kind of talked about this stuff on Twitter. So as far as, like, the kingdoms of what we've seen in Middle-earth, Rohan is definitely my favorite.
Yay!
Wait, which is Rohan?
That's where they go to the Two Towers, where, that's where the horse people come from. The guys on the horses.
The Minotaurs?
What? Minotaurs don't exist here, Al.
No, to my knowledge, there are no Minotaurs in Middle-earth, but then again, who knows?
Okay, so the horse people, they're not Minotaurs?
No. We only said horse people because they're literally people riding on horses.
Yeah.
Oh. I was like, who's horse people?
No. Just the guys who are riding. Carl Urban is one of them.
Yes.
Okay.
At the beginning of the second movie with the really old king.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I saw it. Okay, I know who they are now.
Yeah. So that kingdom, I like. Look, Minas Tirith is like really beautiful. I really like how like they do the scale of it. It's a really cool looking city, but I feel like Gondor sucks.
Gondor.
Nick, tell us how you really feel.
Look, there are good people in Gondor, but as a kingdom, they suck.
Damn, Aragorn is the king of Gondor.
I mean, look,
I guess that's why it sucks.
This is all of my, because we don't see Aragorn ruling, so I don't have an opinion of Aragorn's rule. But why am I? Have all these names. I've had all these names memorized for months, waiting for this episode, and I'm blanking on all of them. Faramir and Boromir's dad, Denethor. Yeah.
Yes, he sucks.
He great actor, John Noble. Great for the role. He's a piece of shit.
Well, yes, that's the point.
Boromir, great character. Faramir, he's the guy. He's the guy. And correct me if I'm wrong, in the books, doesn't he, like, become, like, Prince of Gondor?
Yeah. I think that's just kind of, you know, some
The
kind of
title.
right he had, because he was the son of the steward. So Aragorn, I think, made him prince. But he wasn't any heir. He wasn't like an heir to the throne or anything.
Yeah, of course.
But why does Gondor suck? Is it just because of their dad?
Well, I just feel like why did Gondor not show up for like to help Rohan? Like,
Okay, there's an answer to that. I mean, the short answer is they were really dealing with their own problems. Like, it is again more clear in the book that Mordor was essentially just pounding away at Gondor the entire time that battle at Helm's Deep was going on. That going to save them was not realistic. So, but I get you. I do. And I think that the movies lean into that being a really big problem.
yeah. And it's...
But I want to say this in defense of Gondor. And because I agree with you, I like Rohan better. But, and I also think we're going to get into even more in the Amazon show of the flaws of their ancestors. Like, Gondor is very flawed. But it was Gondor that really was the country that had to do the most against Mordor for really a long, long time. Like, is
it the same in the books that, like, Minas Tirith is, like, literally right there, like it is in the movies?
Yes, okay. Exactly. That is, it's location-wise, it's right next to Mordor, and Mordor was always messing with Gondor, obviously, or attacking it in some ways. So they were always the ones fighting and dying to defend the rest of Middle-earth from Mordor. And I think they deserve some credit for that. And that's part of the reason why Boromir is particularly desperate when we meet him, and why he's the most vulnerable to the ring. I think that's my interpretation.
That's fair.
Because he has seen for his whole life his country have to fight against this seemingly unstoppable force, and he has had to be a soldier his whole life and a leader, and then he, that just made him more vulnerable to the ring. So, yeah, I agree with you that Gondor is not as cool as Rohan, certainly, but they deserve some respect for all the dying they had to do to keep the rest of Middle-earth safe. And you could argue that Rohan maybe should have been doing more to help them in that effort.
Okay, in that respect, okay, you're right, okay.
That's just Tolkien lore coming out, though, because that's...
Well, I will say, though, granted, I don't know Rohan's history. I don't know much of Middle-earth's history, but at least in the context of what I've seen in the movie, like, he was, Theoden was under control of them for at least a period of time. I don't know how long that was. But that...
It was. But I'm saying they were fighting against Mordor for a long time, and I would say that there's no way he was under the control of Grima for more than, like, a year. And I doubt it's even that long.
I will say, though, when I saw...
Yeah. Anyway, what? Sorry?
No, yeah. When I saw Brad Dourif showed up, I had absolutely no idea he was in these movies.
Yeah, he's so good, though.
He's such a great character actor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of actors that I didn't know was in this movie. I remember when I first watched the second film, I was like, is that Agent Smith?
Wait. It took you until the second movie to realize that?
Oh, wait, was he in the second movie or the first one?
He's in all three.
Oh. Wait, who was the actor who was in the second movie that was like, what, he's in this movie?
Carl Urban?
Yeah, it was Carl Urban.
Yeah, from The Boys.
He's in here too? Jesus Christ.
Carl Urban caught me off guard too, because I didn't know. Either. But I think for me, I was more excited to see Brad Dourif just because he's such a good character actor. And Carl Urban is fine. He's great as Éomer. Like, I liked him a lot. It's just I hate him in Thor Ragnarok. That's why I'm just like, oh. Okay,
Oh God! I always can you believe how many actors? Not to go on an MCU tangent, but like how many actors has the MCU
wasted?
Just wait?
Yep.
Like they had Carl Urban
and Kate Blanchett.
They had Idris Elba.
They had Idris Elba.
To be fair, Idris Elba had like a slightly better time in Ragnarok than he did here because he was like the person who was saving everybody.
I guess.
They had
Whatever.
Mads Mikkelsen. That's another. Rachel McAdams. Like God, how many people have they wasted?
They're gonna get Christian Bale.
Oh my God! I don't even think. No, let's stop talking about it. We're talking about Lord of the Rings. I don't want to.
Okay, so.
Other people that surprised us.
Just a thing, and I'm curious, and I don't want to, start anything, start any sort of issue.
Oh God!
But I noticed that of the two movies that I've seen, these movies are a little. How should I say this without coming off as
white?
Okay, good. So you said it for me. Good.
I said it in our group chat a long time ago, but I said it late at night when everyone was sleeping, and the only one who said anything back to me was Artyom. And look, that's you could say it was a product of their time, but at the same time, this is only 20 years ago, and you could be like, oh, but they filmed in New Zealand, but they're also any actor of color was an orc.
The filming in New Zealand that's such a dumb excuse. No, God, most of the actors in the movies are not from New Zealand.
I know.
I just kind of lopped it up to the time the actual book came out.
That's not much of an excuse either. Honestly, okay. In my opinion, you can argue that Sam is not white. Because, some people would argue with me, the book was just describing him as tan. But, sure, maybe Tolkien didn't really mean for him to be not white when he wrote him, but I don't really care that much what Tolkien intended. Why do we have to do it the way he intended it exactly? That's so stupid. But Sam is repeatedly described as brown, in the books. Yeah, his skin is just described as brown more than once. So I've always been he could have been cast as an actor who's not white easily. So that's one example. I think the Hobbits in general should have been cast that whole Shire casting should have been not just been white. That I don't think was a good idea at all. And other characters, the elves are always described as white, sure, but I don't see why all the elves have to be white.
I can imagine black elves.
I can imagine all the elves being white. That's not that doesn't surprise me. Because they kind of fit that. They fit that very conservative kind of.
Almost like that Aryan view of.
Yeah, that's what I was blonde hair,
perfection.
Blue eye. Yeah.
That's true.
So I always pictured all of them would just be white because that kind of makes sense.
But all the humans?
Oh my God. There's a bunch of humans, not one of them is a different color.
I know.
It's funny that I didn't even realize that, obviously, I'm a white person, so, I'm trying to get better at this stuff, but, obviously, whenever there's something, not diverse, it should be, I should catch it quicker, but unfortunately, I just don't. So it took me, 2 or 3 watches before I realized there's not a single person of color that's not an orc in this, huh?
Yep.
Even, here, as an example, so, in the Hobbit movies, the main villain, Azog the White Orc, do you want to know who plays him?
Wait, who plays him?
Manu Bennett, who played Deathstroke on Arrow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, once again, a person of color.
Yep.
Who's just a villain.
Yeah.
And not even that, a CGI villain.
Also, I will say though, wait, Liz, have you seen what the practical Azog looked like?
Yeah.
What do you think of that? I just want to get your quick thoughts on that.
I think it looks cool. But see, I'm and I get the CGI problems in The Hobbit, I do, but I actually like the way Azog looks.
I agree. Cool. I think practically, I think there should have been more practical effects in The Hobbit. I do like Azog's look as CGI compared to the practical.
Agree. I think he has a really cool CGI design, and I think they did a good job with the effects of it. Now, would the practical have been cool? Yeah, but I'm okay with his design. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I'm looking at them now, like the practical versus the CGI. To be honest, I prefer the more. I've always preferred very practical, things when it comes to movies. Like, if you have to use CGI, then, like, I would say just use CGI when it really calls for it. But, like, for example, I was watching The Thing. I watched, both the original and, like, the 2011 version. And for me, like, the 2011 version, when it's all CGI, it just doesn't really feel as, like, terrifying or as, disgusting as it would if it was all practical. Because when it's practical, there's a sense of realism to it. Like, it looks semi-realistic, and therefore it makes you a little more scared of what you see. But when it's all CGI, it just feels like it's not there, and it just doesn't leave as good of an impression. So that's what I feel when I see this.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the problem with pretty much all of big budget Hollywood right now, is that they've gone so far away from the practical effects of everything. But, like, I don't understand it, because, like, obviously you could say it was 20 years ago, and so, like, things might be a little more expensive now. Okay, well, fine, whatever. But realistically, the Hobbit movies, the Lord of the Rings movies were made for, what, like, $90 million each?
I don't know.
And they look a million times better than budgets of, like, $300+ million now.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah, that's just kind of how I see it when it comes to the CGI.
Like, I understand sometimes, like you literally cannot do something practically, and I understand that. But, like,
yeah, like Gollum.
Yeah, especially because, like I've seen what he's looked like in, like, other animated versions, and, like, oh god, that's
it's
horrible.
So weird.
He's
seeing
like,
other versions.
They literally make him look like a frog.
Oh yeah, that was in the first version, right?
I think that was one of those. Yeah, either like the animated Hobbit or the animated Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, I actually agree. I just think, like, that's the thing. Like, I think what part of what makes the movies age so well is that because of the practical effects, it feels way more real than, unfortunately, as much as I love them, than the Hobbit movies do.
Yep. I agree. I think some of the effects in The Hobbit will hold up. Like, I think the dragon still looks great.
Oh, I agree.
But some of it, no. And honestly, some of it didn't even look good at the time. I feel like they sort of ran out of effort at the CGI.
Emily, can you not do that right here?
Yeah.
Hold that thought.
Okay. Well, Al, I get what you're saying about casting. That is for sure.
Yeah. I think...
No, go ahead.
Sorry. I think, it's not something that I would say is a bad thing. Like, me personally, it's not, like, so much a bad thing, Mm-hmm. It's just something that I just noticed as I was watching the film.
Yeah,
Part of the problem, too, I mean, this is on racism, is that, and this is something, if they want to, they can work on and make a lot better, if this is even addressed in the Amazon series, which I don't know if it will be. But there's this, it's very clear in the movies and in the books too, that a lot of what Sauron was doing was making sure that the people in the East, which is obviously code for Asia, it's like that's where the Asian people in Middle Earth live. It's what's always implied. That Sauron was like, getting them on his side. And yes, it's always implied that not all of them were on his side, but that we don't really get into that at all. It's just.
Okay. So that is this like why? I remember this story. Like, Tolkien was made back in like the 50s, right?
I love how you said that Tolkien was made in the 50s. He published the books in the 50s. Yeah.
Okay, so he published the book in the 50s. Well, I don't know when he was writing them, like, wasn't like the 50s during the time of like the North Korea, like the North Korean War or something? The Korean War.
I wouldn't know. I'm not.
Yeah, because I thought that was like the reference to it. Like Sauron sort of represented like a, I don't know, criminal, not war criminal, but like someone who wanted to conquest the East to be on their side.
I just checked.
Oh, okay, so I was right.
Well, I mean,
not right, but like.
Well, wasn't? Yeah, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't he in World War I or II?
Yes, he was in World War I.
Okay. But World War I, that was that. No, I don't know.
But I do want to. Something that they have the potential to make really interesting, if they do this, is Nick knows this, but you'll see it in the next one. Al, is we see the Haradrim, which is this whole. Like, Nick, they're the ones who come in on the elephants, which is a really fun...
No, sorry, Olifants.
Oh, excuse me. I love that you corrected me. The Olifants, which is a great scene, Al. And you'll see that. That's a really cool scene. But there, obviously, that section is like... Oh, in the book it's clear, that's where there are black people in Middle-earth. Go find them. There are black characters.
And they're bad guys.
To me, that is still no excuse. There's no reason at all that that Gondor couldn't have been a diverse place, in my opinion. But anyway, so it's clear that, like, that's where black people live in Middle-earth, according to Tolkien. And so we meet those characters, but we don't really get to know much about where they're from or who they are as a people, other than, like, Sauron has gotten them on his side somehow. But in the Second Age show, we find out in the Second Age why the Haradrim don't like Gondor. And it's because, well, essentially they became really bad for a while and were really shitty colonizers. Just there.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they're... And that was when they weren't even Gondor at that point, because this was pre-Gondor, like before they had become Gondor, that they were really shitty. So the Haradrim have beef with Gondor that goes way back, and Sauron used that to turn them to his side. So while I think there are a lot of problems with having those characters as like the side of evil, if they write it well in the Amazon show, I think they can do something really interesting with like us seeing that country and the characters and why there is this centuries-long strained relationship between Gondor and the Haradrim. So I hope that happens in the show.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I feel like that was, at least, I don't know if it was it Gondor or was it Rohan, where like Saruman was like trying to like get them to fight Rohan. Was that the second movie?
That's different. That's a whole different group.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's not the Haradrim. The Haradrim just like they're like this big country that are south of Gondor. That's the Dunlendings. Who?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Those are the characters. Those are like these kind of just mountain people that we see. But those are the people that we'll see in the anime movie who fight with Rohan.
Oh wait, there's an animated movie?
Really? That's what we were talking about earlier. There's an anime movie.
Oh no, I mean like there's an anime. Oh yeah,
it was just announced.
They're making.
That was announced. Yeah,
it was literally just announced. Like it's brand new news. Like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I had to remember. I did see that. It's made by I forgot who's the animator for it again.
I don't. The director or the animation studio?
Wait, who's the animation studio? I probably wouldn't know them.
I do not know.
Hold on.
I'm very excited for it.
It's called War of the Rohirrim. That's what it's called.
What's it called?
War of the Rohirrim.
Oh no, I was talking about who's the anime studio.
Yeah, that I have no idea.
I'm really excited for that, though.
Me too.
I think that Middle-earth in animation is great. Like, I think fantasy in animation is perfect, really. I think it should be more respected, because sometimes fantasy in animation is a lot better.
Mm-hmm. And, like, I know this is, like, kind of sort of off topic, but that's why I think, like, making, like, Avatar: The Last Airbender to live action is a mistake.
Yeah, no, bad.
Oh, it's Kenji Kamiyama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I looked him up a lot. Well,
oh, I know who this is. He did Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, he's the Ghost in the Shell. Oh, that guy. He did the Ghost in the Shell anime.
Oh, that's cool.
It seems like he's a really well-respected director.
Yes.
Animes are really liked, so I have no reason to think that they won't do a good job.
It's just Warner Brothers is my only issue.
No, don't bother him.
just let him do his work. He's a professional.
Well, I feel like maybe because it's animation that they might be more hands off, because I feel like Warner Brothers doesn't know what to do with animation, so they just let the directors have more freedom there. I don't know.
I hope so. I am really looking forward to that, though. I think it will look beautiful, if nothing else.
Oh yeah, for sure. I
can't wait to get casting. I really want to know who's going to be in it.
I know, me too. Like, are they going to get names, or are they just going to get good talent? 'Cause I'm fine either way.
I'm good either way. Like, plenty of actors have been great voice actors, but I think it'd be really cool if we had just, like, some really, experienced voice actors.
Oh, he also did Moribito. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, you guys have to see this anime called Moribito. It's Moribito.
Okay.
Yeah,
I will add it to my imaginary list of animes that I will watch.
But no, it has the same feel as Lord of the Rings, and it was worked on by the same person who's doing this Lord of the Rings anime.
Gotcha.
Okay. Well, glad to know he can do that tone.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and that's the nice thing. Like, it's nice to have new content to look forward to. Like I was saying earlier, like to not have like the Hobbit trilogy be it. I know. It was very sad. It was very sad when Dad was done with the Hobbit. I'm sorry.
I totally agree with your baby.
But yeah, I feel like I came into the fandom at a good point. Because I feel like if I did go in, like... It almost feel like if I became a Star Wars fan, like, after Revenge of the Sith came out. Or, like, right after, you know? To just have that, like, gap of, like, no, like, great content other than, like, maybe the Clone Wars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So, obviously we've been talking for a couple hours now, and I don't want to keep you guys up all night. So, before we head out, is there anything else you guys have on top of your head that you wanted to bring up?
Not really. I think I learned all I need to know. I'll definitely be looking forward to seeing the rest of the movies.
Good. So, I will expect your reviews first thing in the morning.
Okay, so I have to ask a question. So would you guys recommend that I do watch The Hobbit though?
I would say yes.
Okay, so is there anything in The Hobbit that sort of would, I don't know, like sour my taste in the original films, or?
Oh no, not at all. I don't think so. No.
No, I don't feel that way, because there are some things, you know, like Star Wars, that like they made decisions that then messed up how I feel about their movies, which is a bad thing. But I don't feel that way about The Hobbit. The biggest flaws in those movies is just like there shouldn't be 3, and you can kind of tell that they're extended way past what they need to be, and some of the CGI isn't great, and there's just some things that like didn't need to be there. That's really, but it's not like, oh, this is betraying the story, you know?
Yeah,
right.
Like it's not like she was the one who brought it up as an example, not me. It's not like a bringing back Palpatine from the dead thing. Like it doesn't
exactly.
Like,
Okay.
I disagree with Liz with Star Wars opinions as far as that goes. Like, I don't hate this particular decision, but I understand why. But as far as this topic goes, there's nothing in the Hobbit movies that like taint or like ruin what they established in the Lord of the Rings. If anything,
Darth Vader sacrificed his life for nothing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, back to Lord of the Rings.
If anything, you gain more, you don't lose anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is what
and
I
you
can
get
say.
to meet like his daddy, and that's so fun.
Who's dad?
Oh, Legolas. Too.
Oh, really?
His dad. You get to meet his dad. It's wonderful.
Is that the dude that everyone keeps fawning over?
Lee Pace.
It's Lee Pace. Lee Pace in a long blonde wig.
It's the guy who played the bad guy in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Oh God! Don't reduce him to that.
He played Ronan the Accuser in the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
Was in that movie.
You should, because it's not good.
Was it Rohan?
Ronan. Huh? Ronan the Accuser was his name.
Oh, okay.
But he's a million times better in The Hobbit. Don't worry.
Yeah, because he actually has things to do and he can look beautiful.
Okay then.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I should probably get going.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Thank you guys for being here. I'm sure this won't be the last time we talk about Lord of the Rings because we have
another episode after Al finishes the movie.
Oh yes, there will be. Yes,
I will finish it as soon as possible.
Okay,
fantastic. We'll do the episode tomorrow.
Yeah,
right. I wouldn't say that as soon as possible, but okay.
Yeah, so thank you guys for being here. It was nice to kind of be back and talk about some stuff that, this is different for us. If you guys have been listening to us for any period of time, but I was excited to finally delve into Lord of the Rings. My kids are both calling me away, so thanks again. I'll talk to you guys soon. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for listening. If you like our podcast, hit that subscribe button down below so you can hear all of our previous episodes or newest episodes coming out whenever they do come out. Forgive my son. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Hit that like button, share this video if you like it. Thank you guys so much again, and until next time, have a good one.